Hey folks, welcome back. It's Lucid, and we are back in NewCasting. I've got another few turns for you here. I'm expecting we're going to have some pretty chill turns, as I think the board is basically gearing up for a coalition against Lemuria. And I do have some concerns about this, as I mentioned last episode. Um, uh, Basically, I feel like they should be moving in and finishing off Satis and finishing off Bogarus. And then that would be the reason for delaying the coalition. I don't really love the idea, if they're not going to be eating people, of delaying turning on Lemuria for any length of time. I feel they probably should go ahead and get that out of the way pretty much pronto, maybe like 2 or 3 turns to rest, but that resting is going to make the lands that Lemuria has much more despoiled, and they're going to get a lot of forts up and a bunch of things. So anyway, message from Falegra. Moving my people out of Arca so Joman can move theirs. One guy went insane this turn, so I scripted him to retreat. Okay. It is cool to see some of these tyrants running around. Ooh. Spicy. So Falegra had mentioned wishing for this, or not wishing, but you make an artifact, he pops out. The problem is somebody else can make that artifact and then resummon him. I think the only way to really protect it is to make the artifact, summon him, the lamp or whatever, and then make it again and keep that in your inventory. And then I think you're pretty much safe. I'm not really sure. I haven't. Maybe he goes away if it gets made again. We actually should. Let me test it. Okay. So yeah, I went and tested it, and doesn't work like that. The second the artifact gets made again, he disappears. So it's a pretty big danger putting much gear on him, because basically somebody can just make the artifact, and the second he's made, he disappears. I think that means the items on him go just poof. So, anyway, Falegra turning the heat up on Satis, which probably makes sense, but this is how should we say? It hasn't gone so well for him in the past. All this Satisian fighting. Yeah. So I think that's it for this time. We're just going to speed through these until we get to the next series where there's some action. Okay, we've got turn 79. No messages, as not too much is happening. Bogarus using some golems. Seems pretty cool. Otherwise, not too much happening. We'll take a look at score graphs real quick. Yeah, Joman losing a bit of ground. I guess this was concessions he made to Bogarus primarily. Yeah, so he really bought Bogarus back into the game. I really don't love this idea, as I mentioned before. Now Lemuria's in a clear position 1. In that sense, it's nice, but I think if you're Bogarus, I think if you're Joman, if Lemuria is 10% smaller than you, I think they're just a much scarier nation. I think unless you're going to throne rush or you're in range of that, Lemuria is still in position 1. Like I think here at this point, even when they were this much bigger, Lemuria was in position 1. It's just a very, very scary nation in the late game. And the other thing you have to worry about in the late game, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's one of the things there's a time to take pop kill nations out. You kind of need to do it, in my opinion, ideally for most of them before turn 50. And what time is ideal, that can vary. If you have there's a few nations that really can just run at Lemuria, but for the most part, I think most nations that are going to want to fight Lemuria are going to want to get some key tech online. So you may do things to contain them, do some skirmishing on the borders, etc. But when you really want to put them out of the game, you need some tech online. You really don't want them getting this far into the late game. And that's because, I don't know if we'll see it this game, but basically they have a game-winning spell, Underdark, they cast. And if they can keep that up, it's basically game over. So that's 79. Let's go to 80. All right, we've got turn 80 here. Not too much happening. From Lemuria, the eerie silence of peace, somehow more disturbing than war. I have no idea what the next conflict will be, and hope not to be the target of it. Signed a nap with Bogarus, good relations with the player. Think they're important strategic counterbalance against Jomen, and that seems to have done... that they seem to have done well against. Naps with Ulm and Abyssia still standing. I'm scared that they might be thinking about coalitioning me. In particular, it looks to me that Ulm doesn't have anything to do, and that's a very scary state. Phlegra is still tempting to eat, but they don't seem more menacing than I already am. Signaled to Jomen that I'd be okay with better relations and potentially a nap. They responded by not responding and burning down the lab and casting iron walls behind them. So I guess this was after they agreed to peace or something. Their forced deployment is also quite biased towards our border. We finished post-war tidying up on border agreements, siege pending. Message from Abyssia. Bogarus suggested attacking Satis. I'm a little scared of big piles of tomb chariots, but Firestorm and Flamestorm could probably deal with them. Flamestorm's like a huge area of effect attack. Firestorm is the battlefield-wide thing. I don't know what any of my neighbors are planning, which makes me reluctant to commit to a war. And losing 4 ancestors to a band of villains, definitely need to make sure to get protection buffs on them. Okay, so... yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense for everybody left in the game to... like, Satis is the only person that's not really doing anything. They're kind of cosplaying Grippa. Yeah. I mean, I think Lemuria should know they're going to get coalition. I think at this point as Lemuria, you just lean into it. I think you enjoy the time that you're going to have to get some infrastructure set up, and maybe, you know, he was saying he didn't know what to do with research targets. Right now with Lemuria, the big risks are battlefield wipes, so you really need ways to block that. But yeah, that's actually like one of the big major vulnerability windows for Lemuria is the period where battlefield wipes are up and they don't have the counters to them, because usually their research is a little bit slow. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what I would be worried about. And everybody else had better, once they have those wipes, like we already have seen Firestorm deployed a few times here, they need to make hay and use those with... you know, is basically all the time, as much as they can, and start kind of thinning the ghost hordes and pushing them back. Okay, so that's turn 80. Let's go to turn 81. All right, turn 81. Okay, we got a bunch of messages here. Phlegra accidentally sent me a message that I assume was directed to Omniscience. I really thought I'd be the one to pull that move, to pull off that move. Since I'm a good sport, I'll relay the information in it. It explains that they should have attacked me the moment they saw ghosts on their border, and that they now plan to turn on me and build a coalition. A plan that includes being nice to Jomen. I can't fault them for it, it makes sense. Not sure what to do about it, though. I could attack them early with while their armies are tied up to sieging Arco, and disproportionately mobilized east, leaving their cap and core territory naked. I can probably raid 60% of their territory and crack open 2 forts in the first turn. I guess they don't have a non-aggression pact. I don't really remember exactly what they said, even though the words probably came out of my mouth a moment ago. I've placed my armies with that plan in mind. Problem is, that would surely help the case to build a coalition against me. If I had to guess, I might end up at war with Phlegra, Ulm, and Jomen, a perspective I'm not looking forward to. I think attacking right now, or even 2 turns ago, is the optimal play, and the experienced players would go for it, but us noobs are more shy and less confident. I'm sending proposals for a joint attack to Satis and Abyssia. Bogarus, unfortunately, has bad access. There's no scenario where I'd want to eat Phlegra by myself, and their participation would help. So that's an interesting idea, offering other players to help. You'd have to be a little crazy to actually help Lemuria at this point. Game state analysis from Ulm. Joman coalition over. I'm doing better. Lemuria coalition likely. Planning to cast astral corruption. Ooh, that's spicy. As the premier blood nation left in the game, that's kind of good. It's though Lemuria kind of can cast spells through astral corruption because of all their immortal commanders. So position 1 Lemuria, astral corruption not a great against them. But it's understandable for Ulm to want to cast. I think I would rather they make boosters. Like, the way to kill Lemuria, actually, and I wouldn't expect somebody to do this in a new player game, but that's what I'm here casting for. I think the much better use of Blood Slaves is to build boosters or, summon vampires so that they can do... oh god, what's the spell called? Infernal Disease, which will kill off all the Lemurian commanders that aren't consuls or Grand Lemurs. And you just spam that every time you see one of the little priests. And enough doing that. And then if you can do that in conjunction with winning the big battles and maybe a little bit of horror spam too, I think that's a better plan than Astral Corruption. Because the other thing is, to win against Lemuria too, a lot of other nations are going to need to cast spells. You might cripple the coalition against Lemuria more than you kind of help yourself. So, not really a fan of putting up Astral Corruption. It's also kind of makes the game less fun for a lot of players. So, if you're trying to win, I don't think you worry about that, but I worry about it. I kind of like the game to be fun. Anyway. But I actually don't think it's the optimal move here either. I think this game's going roughly how I wanted. I believe everyone has now pieced out with Joman, who I believe has now lost a decent amount of territory, while I was able to build up strength and get my portion of the Agarthan land, which doesn't appear to have been site searched, but I'm working on fixing that. Meanwhile, the others had to expend resources for the war effort. I believe I'm now relatively in a much better position than I was 10 or 20 turns ago, so that's good. After the end of the Joman coalition, everyone has been trying to figure out what to do, and what everyone else is going to do. There's a great demand for certainty, which I have been attempting to supply by suggesting there is a general mood to fight Lemuria, which is true, but I'm making sure everyone else knows it. I expect this to happen, and probably pretty soon. This will protect me, as I would expect Lemuria to attack the Throne of Water, which I'll attempt to storm this turn. Hopefully I can get the Water Province somewhere as well. A Water Province somewhere as well. Yeah, he wants Bishop Fish because he's thinking about a Throne Rush. I've also been toying with the idea of casting Astral Corruption for the past 15 turns or so. This should be particularly effective against Lemuria and to a lesser extent Joman, who I think has a minor blood economy. I still consider these two nations the game leaders. To this end, I asked Abyssia if they'd be willing to supply some of the blood slaves, and they are in favor. Abyssia awaiting response from Bogarus. Yeah, actually, there are other blood powers. I don't know what I was saying about Ulm being the premier blood power. There is Abyssia and Bogarus, who are both very good blood nations. So, I don't like the Astral Corruption idea. I feel like you need to use a lot of magic against Lemuria. I think you need the Blood Slaves to do other things. Abyssia is in the coalition. Current plan is to attack in 2 turns. Message from Abyssia. Diplomatic maneuvers are coming fast and furious. In addition to Bogarus wanting to attack Satis, Lemuria wants to attack Falegra. Ulm and Falegra want to attack Lemuria. I agree with them that Lemuria is very scary, but I worry that attacking Lemuria will give the game to Joman, in addition to benefiting me very little even. Ulm, Bogarus, and I are discussing putting up Astral Corruption to counteract the gym advantage Lemuria and Joman have. Right now I'm at peace. This is from Bogarus. That might change in the future. Joman and Lemuria have separately approached me about fighting Falegra together. Due to my currently small border with Falegra, I've declined for now, but I made it known that I would help if I got better access to Falegra. From my perspective, I could have the opportunity to gain a couple provinces without facing heavy resistance. On the economic side of things, I think this is actually a mistake. I think for Joman to propose they go on Falegra, I think that throws the game to Lemuria. Phalegra, I think, would need to be a linchpin, like, coalition ally against Lemuria. So I'm not a fan of that. Yeah, obviously, helping Lemuria eat somebody else at this point, I think, is also throwing the game. So I think Bogarus attacking Phalegra is not a great idea. On the economic side of things, my Bloodhanged machine comes back to full power and expands. I'm planning to empower a Necromancer in Blood to get vampires as well. Okay, I mean, Bogarus has access to Blood Death. I think Staretza are his best. A Necromancer is going to have a bit higher death, but yeah. I don't know. A lot of times you can do it with, like, if you have access to, like, Rings of Wizardry or things like that. A deeper death access might be useful, and there are other roles vampires would fill for me as well. Unique blood summons aren't really a target for me right now, since I don't know which are already summoned. Yeah, and there's a lot of blood powers left in the game. Not much going on the military front. Looks like we have the last holdout of Agartha here. Some Tomb Morals inside, and a lot of Skelly spam. So the Hawkmeisters are riding through. I have to remind myself what their bless is. Solar weapons, decay weapons, MR, and blood surge. So they'll be killing a lot of these long dead here. Oh, he's got a Phoenix Pyre Archdevil. That's pretty funny. With Soul Vortex. Okay. Chest wound. You might actually lose him. Soul Vortex isn't going to work here against Long Dead. It does look like he's stolen a Tomb Oracle who actually died. There's Enslaved Mindspan coming out from home. That was how he got the Tomb Oracle. A little sad he didn't get to keep it. But yeah, pretty clean victory here. Yeah, let's keep moving forward. So I think there's still uncertainty in terms of what diplomatically is going to happen. The only thing I think we know, let's take a look at it, is it looks like Lemuria is going to make a move on Phalegra quickly. And if they knife Phalegra, first of all, everybody should turn on them immediately. But I think that might be... They might have taken out enough of the coalition, especially if they get like a few turns warning, like people wait for the naps to tick down. Like they could probably completely kill Phalegra by the time other people are able to do anything. Depending on how well Phalegra plays. And what they have researched. So, yeah, I think the concerns people have about Joman kind of rising ascendant here, I think one thing you have to just kind of wrap your head around when you get in a coalition is it's going to be good for other players that are in it with you. Right? So you actually want Joman to do well. What you don't want them to do is win the game. So you can come to some agreement about what territory they'll get back with them, and then if they're going to get too close to too many thrones... You know, like, Joman wants people to jump into a coalition against Lemuria. It's obviously in their interest. It's probably, like, one of the only ways they're going to be able to pull off a W here. Like, if people don't coalition Lemuria, it's going to be real hard for Joman to win. And Joman in position 2, it's reasonable for people to ask things of him. Like, if he's potentially going to be able to throne rush, then, you know, people who don't have many thrones could maybe steward a throne from Joman. So they could say, like, okay, let's do the thing, the coalition, but I want a throne in exchange for joining, and that way you can't run away and throne rush. But yeah, that's turn 81. Let's go to turn 82. All right, turn 82. Oh my goodness. It has happened. Lemuria said it, and that has happened. Phalegra has messaged me to cancel their nap, even though it was already lifted before. I interpreted that as meaning they have secured some form of foreign support, probably from Joman. My window for getting the initiative is closing. So that's a bit strange, even though it was already lifted before. Well, we're going to hear the Phalegra inside of this. If Phalegra asked to cancel their nap, they probably thought it did exist. All right, so I finally signed the orders as we speak. Brave Ghost Legions are crossing the giant border, and the elite Grand Lemur paratroops are being teleported behind enemy lines. Initial goals are taking 3 Phalegra forts I immediately border, and some deep raiding to get cash money, as well as to prevent an easy pullback of their eastern forces. I expect the move to have some cascading Diplo consequences, even without being able to forecast which. Big parts of my army and mages will be defensively deployed to protect my borders. Hopefully I can get some help ending Phlegra soon. Okay, that's a pipe dream. If anybody helps him, for shame. Abyssia seems to be the most likely to help, but the amount of help I can get through Diplo is dwindling as fast as my position in the game rises. Yeah, okay. Lucis just published an episode in this series where he says, it's too late if you haven't killed Lemuria by turn 80. This is turn 82, so here's to hoping. From Bogarus. It seems like Joman has changed their mind. They now aren't interested in fighting Phlegra anymore, and I have heard talks of an anti-Lemuria coalition. Right now, it's unclear to me who is supposed to be part of it. So for now, I'm not part of anything. While the ghosts are certainly scary, I don't really understand where he suddenly went worrying about a scare. Okay, wait. While the ghosts are certainly scary, I don't really understand where he suddenly worries about a scaling Lemuria is coming from. At this point, they should already have most of their key research targets. It's too late to prevent Lemuria from becoming a relevant player, and Joman is dangerous in their own ways. My thinking is more concentrated about improving my own position than stopping a specific player at this point. Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. Look at what he said. My thinking is more concentrated on improving my own position than stopping a specific player at this point. And that was what I said. If y'all go back to maybe like an episode or two ago, I was saying it's rational for a small player like Bogarus to be more worried about improving their own position than worried about, the stopping somebody from winning. What does that mean? It means that as a small player, it's rational for him to backstab potential coalitions if it might be in his short-term interest. And what that means is they should have killed him. So it's really interesting now. So the world's firing up for an anti-Lemuria coalition, and they didn't kill the small players like they needed to, as I suggested they needed to. And that might actually come back to bite them. So we'll see. And people will get pissed at Bogarus if he doesn't join the coalition, but Bogarus is right here. I think he's right to think about trying to improve his own position rather than to throw his forces away for despoiled lands from Lemuria. It's rational, but I think what's important is that people needed to understand this was rational behavior from Bogarus, 10 turns ago, and commit to eliminating him and Satis from the game. We have a message from Phlegra. 2 turns until the majority of players will invade Lemuria. This should be interesting. Oh gosh. So he says it's going to be interesting, and then he gets attacked. So we've got the Lemurian Air Force coming in here. I wonder what he's doing here. Vulnerability Soul Vortex. No gear other than a Starshine Skullcap and just Skelly spam. More Air Force coming in hot. I wonder if he's kidding any of these. I think it's probably better generally not to. I think it depends, obviously. But you're not really ready to take advantage of a lot of the... Ooh, Soul Slay on the Giant. If they die and you lose 60 gems worth of gear that you put on them, you're not getting a ton of value out of immortality. But sometimes it's the right move. But I like the casual raiding that he's doing with the Air Force. Mostly is unkitted. So this is interesting. This is 2 Grand Lemurs coming in. These guys have bottles of water and also reinvigoration gear. I like this kit a lot. Power the Spheres and Soul Slay. Oh. So I was going to say, if you had bottles of water, I think it's actually good to summon some skeletons with them right at the beginning of combat. Because the water elementals supported by Skelly Spam will clear out a lot of things. And then Lemuria attacks here with an army. We're now out of the magic phase. He runs into a Fairy Queen here. If he kills her, this will be very valuable. If they want to attack her, they might have got her. Oh. Oh, she just flies away. No gear on her, though, it doesn't look like. Okay. We need to see where that Fairy Queen battle was. More moving here. And we have Phlegra finishing off this, or taking this Joman fort. Okay. So, sweet Jesus. They've popped this fort, the Throne of Growth. They popped this one. And the thing is, like, you look at this, you're like, okay, well, like, what can Phlegra possibly do? He can't get anything out here to defend it. Like, this all looked like Phlegran land before, but no longer. These forts are completely isolated unless he can magic phase things inside. And there's just so much pressure. He's popped 2 forts and almost popped a 3rd this turn. Didn't quite get it. And literally everything around Phlegra's core land is now has a Lemurian flag on it. So this is obviously not good. This obviously is very bad for Phlegra. So this army has to come back and liberate everything over here, and I just don't see how that's happening. I think Phlegra is right to be organizing a coalition against Lemuria, but tipping Lemuria off by accidentally sending him a message intended for me. Oh shit. Not good. Yeah, I think he's boned. I mean, there's interesting things with battlefield wipes that Phlegra can do at this point, if he has the right mages inside these forts. But even if they can do that, it's going to be tricky to kill, like, the Skelly Spam and the Grand Lemurs, which are going to be part of the army. Because they'll tend to not rout even after you've killed the army just due to being immortal. And we could go through and look at all of the kits on these guys. Like, this actually is a kind of weird army, because there's no mage support. So it's kind of a weird thing. You would normally want mage support on something like this. So, like, this is just begging to have Firestorm cast on it. Basically all of these are. So hopefully Phlegra's ready. If they were going to start this war in 2 turns, they would also need to be ready. You know, maybe they thought they had a couple more turns to prepare, but they would need to be ready for this exact kind of attack. So we'll see if they do have Firestorm available. I mean, pretty much all their tyrants, I think, can cast it. And a tyrant casting Firestorm is kind of nightmare fuel for Lemuria. Yeah, especially if it's fluffed or buffed or what have you. Though they can also cast it with their basic mage core. So I think we're going to end this episode here. Pretty cool. We've made it through the chill turns, and we're now getting back into the spicy bit, where hopefully we'll see a coalition descend upon Lemuria. So stay tuned.